Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with my review for Better Call Saul, Season 4, Episode 3. So I thought this was another great episode this week. Honestly, I really loved episode 2. I said in the review too that I thought it was probably in my top 15 episodes of Better Call Saul. Like all time throughout the season so far. And yeah, I mean, I really liked it. Maybe even top 10. Maybe top 10. Like I really enjoyed episode 2, and this one almost just as much as episode 2. I really enjoyed this one. We got a huge reveal at the end, near the end, which I loved. With the Breaking Bad character making an appearance. We had two Breaking Bad characters actually in this one. That made an appearance, but and I expect that going forward too. That's what I'm really excited about for this season is them continuing to sprinkle in these Breaking Bad characters at opportune points. It's really great. So so we got a lot of stuff here with Nacho this episode. I mean, quite a bit of stuff. Again, one of the things that I will say is Mike was in one scene in this episode. One scene, and it was not a long one either. Not a lot of focus. So I'm not sure why that is, and I really love Mike as a character. I mean, through the first 3 seasons so far, it's been Jimmy and Mike. I mean, it's kind of been, I would say, maybe a 60-40 between Jimmy and Mike, right? 60 for Jimmy. But it's kind of, been they've, had parallel stories, going forward. And now the last 2 episodes, he's only been, and even in the first episode, he, had quite a bit of screen time, but it wasn't a huge, part. So I'm just wondering if this is how the rest of the season's going to be. Maybe Jonathan Banks was working on something else at the time, and he actually just couldn't be in that many episodes. I don't know exactly what's going on, but he wasn't in much of this episode, so I expect next week we will see more of Mike. I hope so. But anyway, so we'll go through a little bit of a recap here for this episode, and then we'll get to my rating, favorite character for this one, and some more overall thoughts. Talk a little bit about the absence of Mike and the return of this Breaking Bad character. And obviously, spoilers for the episode as always. So we start off here with Victor and Tyrus taking Nacho out to the desert in a car with Arturo's dead body in the back, right? And so this whole scene that plays out here is pretty much, them trying to cover up, right, killing Arturo. They actually, suffocated him with that bag over his head, in the end of last episode. But now they basically have to set it up so it looks like to the Salamancas that they were randomly hit, and that's why Arturo was killed, right? And so they go through all of this, work just to make it look realistic to the Salamancas that this happened. So this just shows how far Gus is willing to go with this, and how, and how much he really wants Nacho to be, on his side, right? Because if the Salamancas find out what Nacho did, he's pretty much dead, right? And he's not useful to Gus anymore, obviously. And so Gus is willing to go through great lengths, right, to keep Nacho on his side. So they set up the whole scene to make it look like they got in a fight, and that's how Arturo was killed, right? Not by Gus, right? So they're basically just making it seem like someone else did it. Victor then actually shoots Nacho and wounds him, right? So he shoots him in the shoulder first, right? And, that was just to, and Nacho, accepted that. And then he's walking away from the car, right? And he's, about to make the phone call to the Salamancas. And Victor shoots him again. And this, Nacho was not expecting this one. A pretty, pretty painful shot too. I mean, right in the stomach, I think he got him. And he wounds him, right? He really wounds him. So he falls down, Nacho. And then Victor says, gotta make it look real. And then he walks away. So obviously we get a little bit of bad blood. Now, I'm not sure that Victor, did this against Gus's orders. No, I mean, Gus probably ordered this anyways, but Victor for sure was delighted to go through with it because him and Nacho's relationship, not the best, right? I mean, they kind of just, they're pretty much the top guy's, main henchman, pretty much, right? And so they don't really get along. So anyways, So now Nacho will call someone, right, which ends up being the twins later on, and they will come and investigate, right? And all of this is to make sure that the Salamancas won't find out Nacho is responsible for what happened to Hector and basically put him into this coma or this stroke, right? And so, yeah, just a really great scene, too. Some great cinematography. We start off the episode where we see these, pieces of headlight being sprinkled down the road. And then we get Victor driving purposely over that, tire track there on the road. So the cinematography, the way the episode started out here was really great. I mean, this is just vintage, Breaking Bad type of cinematography here, where they show, they have a really close-up shot and you have no idea what's happening, and then they kind of widen it out a little bit, they tell us a little bit more, and then you totally understand why they just showed, in this example, showing a tail light being sprinkled on the road, right? It makes sense when they kind of broaden it out. So anyways, that was great. So then we see a little bit after that, then the twins, the Moncada brothers, or I just call them kind of the twins because there's really no other, big twins, significant twins in the show, of course. So anyway, so they arrive on the scene for Nacho, right? And they take him back to the truck, try to fix him up a little bit, but they can't really do much, right? So they recognize that he's actually in pretty bad condition. So they actually, so they take him back to the truck and then they set the car on fire with Arturo in it. So, they didn't even, I don't know. I don't know. It just seemed a little weird that they maybe didn't take Arturo's body, or at least, pay their respects or something. I guess they really didn't know Arturo that well, so maybe they just wouldn't have, maybe they just saw him as, oh, well, he works for he works for Hector too. So maybe that, maybe that's why. But anyway, so they set the car on fire, so there's no kind of evidence of what happened. Of course, they don't want, police getting involved. So then Nacho tells them that he doesn't know who hit them, and that's the whole point of it, right? Like, he has to continue lying to the twins for this to work, and it seems to have worked because the twins kind of buy what Nacho was saying. The scene looked realistic to them, and they're not really suspecting anything. So it seemed to have worked for now. Whether it actually works in the long run, we'll have to see. But for now, it looks like it did work. So then, and then, of course, they take Nacho to the vet, but that's a little bit later on. And then Jimmy then meets with Mike in a restaurant, telling him about the statue of the fax company, right? And so his whole plan, that he called him last episode, about, right, at the end of the episode. And this was Mike's only scene in the whole episode. And again, I'm just a little bit disappointed in that. But anyways, so of course the title of the episode, Jimmy tells Mike, let's do something beautiful here, right? And it's just kind of, funny because he's saying something beautiful and he's trying to steal this this doll from this guy, this fax company guy. Anyways, so that, I title up the episode, and he says, let's do something beautiful here. And Mike is really just not interested, right? And he says, he's passing on the idea, says it's not for him, and it shouldn't be for Jimmy either, right? And so he thinks, Mike kind of sees through Jimmy, right? And he thinks, are you doing this to actually make the money, or are you doing this to kind of get vengeance, for the way they kind of treated you, or at least, your your thoughts about them, right? Like, Jimmy thinks that they're kind of dumb, right? He doesn't really respect their intelligence, obviously. And so maybe is that why he's doing it more than because he needs the money, right? So Mike totally recognizes that, and, he's right. I mean, at the end of the day, he's right, but Jimmy doesn't let that get him down, of course. So Jimmy, and that's it for Mike. That's it. That's his only scene. So then Jimmy goes back to his car, calls the vet about his fish, right? So that's the code word for basically like the criminal side of this vet. I totally forgot about this guy. Obviously, I remember him from previous seasons, but it took me a little bit to like kind of recognize him. Of course, we haven't seen him since season 3, right? So anyway, so it really obviously is code word, right? The fish thing, but he does actually bring his fish in, so it's kind of funny. Anyway, so he asks the vet to get in touch with a guy to do his job, right? And so that's what this vet does, right? I guess he's kind of like the middleman in between, and it ends up that he's not a very good middleman, right? So Jimmy kind of grabs the phone from him and convinces the guy over the phone anyways, and they decide to meet, right? So the vet didn't really help him out much, but he got in contact with a guy, and now he has agreed to the plan. So then as Jimmy walks out, this was really great too. Jimmy walks out and one of the twins walks in. So oh shit, right? Like you get that little, like for a split second, you're like, oh shit, what's going to happen here? And then you realize Jimmy does not recognize him, right? He just keeps walking, and it's just like a casual bump, bump in for Jimmy, right? But for us, obviously, we know the magnitude of these two characters meeting. It's huge, right? But it doesn't end up being anything, of course, because they don't know each other, right? So anyway, so the twin walks in to get the vet's help, right? So obviously he's pretty well known in kind of the criminal world of things, right? So we see Kim that she goes to Mesa Verde. This is her first time back to work, I guess, and so everyone's pretty happy to see her there. And then we see Kevin. I think is his Kevin Walkdell or Watdell, something like that. But anyways, he's of course from previous season. So he comes in and he shows her their plans for expansion, right, to many new locations. And she's brought into this big room with all these models set up, right? And she gets very overwhelmed. She kind of has a moment where I can't really even describe it. Like she just gets really overwhelmed. She starts like hearing ringing and stuff. So she's not really listening to Kevin at all. And I don't know. The first thing that I thought when I saw this scene was she's worried about if they expand, she obviously cannot be the only, she cannot be their lawyer anymore, their sole lawyer that's looking after their bank, right? And so maybe she's going to get replaced. That's the first thing I thought when I saw the scene. I was like, oh, she's worried about getting replaced now because of all this expansion. But she could also just be overwhelmed because it's her first day back, and all of a sudden they're throwing all this stuff on her, right? So I think it can be interpreted a couple different ways, but like first my initial thought was that she's worried now that she's not going to be their sole lawyer, right? They're kind of person that they count on, right? There's going to be other ones, and maybe even she might be out of a job because of the expansion, right? So a lot of things there. But anyways, Kim didn't have a big part in this episode either. Later on, the last scene, of course she did, but. So then we see the vet comes out. He goes with the Moncada brothers to treat Nacho. They go to like some, he said the back of a Jiffy Lube, but I don't think they were actually there. They were in some like warehouse, I think. It would be kind of funny if he was like literally saying that they were back in the back of a Jiffy Lube, but I think he was just saying that. But anyways, so they finished patching him up, right? The vet, and I forget his name too, the vet's name, but anyways, they just kind of refer to him as the vet, I guess. But anyway, so he patches him up and he says that he should be all right, but then he says, yeah, you might, if they did hit your colon, which I can't tell right now, you may have the worst infection that you could ever imagine. But I think you're fine. Like he gives them like totally conflicting, diagnosis here. And Nacho's just kind of like, are you like really? You know what I mean? And so anyways, so Nacho is good for now, right? And they leave that bullet in his shoulder too. I feel like that's gonna play a part later on in the season because it just seems like too much of a significant part in that scene where he mentions that the bullet is still in his shoulder and that stuff. So I think that's gonna play a part later on in the season. But we'll have to see, right? So Victor and Tyrus really did get him bad. I mean, they were all just doing it. They were staging a scene, but they actually may have, injured him pretty badly here. So anyways, I don't think they care, right? Like, I don't think they really care that much. But anyways, just something to take in there from that scene for sure. So then the man, Jimmy enlists, I think his name is Iris, right, from Breaking Bad. So he enlists him to go to the fax company there to get the damn doll, right? And so apparently, but it is worth $8,000. So Jimmy gets $4,000 and this Iris guy gets the other $4,000. So it seems like a pretty good deal, right? And it seems like a pretty simple plan. So everything seems to be going as planned. Iris goes in, he finds it, he takes it, replaces it with the other one. So that was also really intelligent to think of that, right, on Jimmy's part. And then all of a sudden, the toilet flushes. And this was just, not hilarious, but it was just kind of, really funny, right? To have this kind of pathetic character that, is the boss of this fax company. He is living in his office, right? And is there overnight, right? And so, like, of course that would happen, right? Of course the guy would be living in the office overnight, right? So it's just, again, another really, quirky Better Call Saul thing. This is, something that they play around with a lot, and this is just this type of stuff that happens to Jimmy like all the time, right? So anyway, so Iris is stuck in there with this guy pretty much all night, it looks like, right? He doesn't know how he's gonna get out until he calls Jimmy to come out and to come down and get him out, which is, you know, pretty funny, right? Because then Jimmy has to leave his bed, go down, and like it ends up that he goes through so much just to get Iris out of the building. Like, why didn't he just do it himself? Like, at the end of the day, for all the stuff he ends up doing, right? So he sets off the car alarm when he gets there, to no success pretty much, because the guy just comes out and turns off the horn. And then he actually breaks into the car and unlocks it, right? And then he basically takes the brakes off, right? And so the car just starts, reversing down the little hill at the parking lot there, making the guy, he comes out and like runs after it, right? And so this gives Iris just enough time, right, to kind of slip out the building and run the other way, when Jimmy just kind of watches this guy, ridiculously try to chase his car that's, driving away. And anyway, so Iris escapes, and Jimmy and him are all good. They get the statue out, but it's just funny because Jimmy ends up going through so much just to get this damn doll. I mean, why didn't he just do it himself, right? So, anyways, just kind of a funny part in this episode for sure. So let me just give you the parts with Gus, and I really didn't understand why the kind of like the first 2/3 of the episode was all this Jimmy stuff, and then all of a sudden we just get Gus. We get this like sequence with Gus that's like 7 or 8 minutes at the end of the episode. It was kind of odd, but anyways, so Gus phones Juan Bolsa, or I guess they call him Don Bolsa, whatever, or Don Juan, whatever, and so he phones Juan, and Juan knows about what happened to Nacho already, right? So he already knows, right? I'm guessing the Salamancas probably contacted him, right? So he tells Gus that he will have to find someone on his side of the border to get his supply from, right? Because things are too dangerous right now. The Salamancas were just attacked, right? And so things are just too dangerous. He's gonna have to find someone on his side of the border. And that's exactly what Gus wanted, right? So everything's playing into his hand right now. Just everything perfectly, right? And so then Juan says he will handle Don Eladio, right? Because Gus knows that, doing that about, just in the U.S. without, the Mexico supply, Don Eladio will not be pleased. And again, exactly what Gus wants. So he doesn't have to deal with Eladio. Juan is going to do it, and he can, basically get his supply from above the border, right? So everything playing, right into his hands, like I said. Everything's going perfectly well for Gus right now, right? He's outsmarting pretty much everybody. So then, this was probably my favorite scene of the whole episode here. I don't know. I think it's a big deal. Some people were kind of playing it off, but I think it's a huge, huge deal in Better Call Saul. So Gus goes to the university to meet Gail Bedecker in the lab. So it was unexpected to me. I didn't know that they were going to do this. Well, I'm sure that no one did, but you know what I mean? Like, I just thought it was so unexpected. I didn't think we were going to see Gale at this point in the series, but it was awesome, man. It was awesome. So, David Costabile, I'm a big fan of him. He's been in Suits, he's really good in Billions. Been in a lot. Of course, Breaking Bad he was in too. So, he's been in a lot of shows that I've seen, so I really do respect him as an actor as well. And he did a great job in the scene. But anyway, so Gale shows him some samples that he has tested for him. Presumably, I guess meth samples, right? They're trying to make this the meth, and tells us that he can do much better than these samples, right? I mean, he says like they probably didn't even clean their their equipment, and I can do way better than them, right? And he would be willing to make it right there in the lab for him. And he says, I can make a kilo in the lab here for you, right? And he says, please, it's the least I could do. I wouldn't let you down, right? And so then Gus says that he can't allow it, right? And so we're like, really? Like, is this how Gale started? And then Gus kind of kills it all for us. And he says, I can't allow that yet. And then he says, yet, not yet. So, key word in there is yet, because of course we know that he lets Gale, because Gale is working for him by the time Walter hooks up with him, but right now Gus is not okay with it, and Gale isn't working for him yet. So that is a key word though, because we know that's going to happen soon. And I don't know. I'm not sure if we're going to see Gale again in season 4. maybe near the end of the season, but I don't think we'll see him for another few episodes again. And if I remember correctly here, right, Gus was responsible for his scholarship, right? And so that's why Gale says it's the least I could do, right? So he feels like he owes him still, and that's why Gale is kind of, doing whatever Gus says, essentially, right? I mean, this is, Gus is really, kind of in charge of Gale's, future, right? The scholarship and whatever. So Gale feels like he has to, pay him back for it. And this is how he's going to pay him back eventually, just not yet. So anyways, great scene. I love that scene in this episode. Great reveal. So then maybe the biggest part of the episode here is Kim finally gives Jimmy Chuck's letter to read after he signs off the will. So he gets 5,000 or something from Chuck. So he signs that off, and Kim gives him the letter to read. And so he reads the letter fairly nonchalantly. I mean, right? Like he doesn't really, he doesn't really show any emotion or anything, right? He doesn't really care that much about it. And he's just kind of reading it bluntly and not really getting sentimental at all about it, right? He's really not reacting at all. And he's just kind of reading it normally. And Kim, on the other hand, gets really emotional all of a sudden, and she starts, kind of tearing up. And then she tells Jimmy she needs a minute, right? Closes the door on him even at the end of the episode. And that's how the episode ends. Jimmy's kind of on the other side of the door, and Kim kind of walks away from him. So is she upset that Jimmy is not showing any reaction, right? Because I don't think she's crying at the fact that Chuck is dead, right? There's obviously something deeper here, and I just really think that she's upset that Jimmy isn't showing a reaction. You know what I mean? Like, she recognizes that Jimmy is really affected by Chuck's death, even to the point where he pretty much is not showing any emotion at this point, So I think she's really kind of worried for Jimmy, sad for Jimmy, more than, of course, Chuck's death. But anyways, that can be interpreted a lot of ways, too. That was, a very interesting scene that could be taken, like I said, a lot of ways. So anyways, great scene to end off the episode here. We'll have to see that relationship between Kim and Jimmy. Maybe Kim is even recognizing where Jimmy is going here, and that's maybe how he becomes Saul, right? Because I don't think he's going to become Saul before he gets, before Kim leaves his life, right? And Kim's got to leave his life first before he starts that, kind of transition. And so maybe that's going to happen sooner than later. I don't know. So anyways, that'll just about do it for the recap of the episode. Alright, so in terms of a rating for this episode, I'm going to give it a 4.7 out of 5. I gave last episode a 4.8, so this was like really close. So again, I kind of harped on this throughout the recap here, but Mike is only in one scene in this episode, and I think he was in, 2 scenes last episode, really did not have a big part. Episode 1, he had a little bit more screen time, but his part wasn't that big. Like, he didn't have a huge part to play. So I'm just wondering if Jonathan Banks was actually busy with something else. Maybe that's why he isn't in these episodes. Because honestly, if you look at the first 3 seasons, he's in, he has a lot of screen time in almost every episode. So it's just a little strange that these last, 2 or 3 episodes, he hasn't been in, like, pretty much at all. So anyways, interesting to see. Hopefully he's in more going forward. But even then, like I said last week, that I would expect Mike to be in a lot of this episode, and he wasn't. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully next week he will be in more of it, and I really love to see his character. And I don't know, like, I really don't think you could argue either that he just doesn't really have a storyline right now, because I think he does. I mean, I think he's still really an important character. He just, for some reason, it doesn't have a lot of screen time. So anyways, I think that's going to change soon. Gale return was awesome, man. Totally unexpected at this point in the show. I thought it was going to be way later, but it was really awesome. And again, I'm not sure if we'll even see him again in this season, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe later in the season, but I don't think for the next few episodes, for sure not. So anyways, but it was awesome. It was awesome to see Breaking Bad characters. Anytime they want to give it to us, I'm down for it. So it was really awesome. And it was great to see David Costable portraying Gale again. Really great stuff. So, and he wasn't a huge character in Breaking Bad by any means, but his death was probably one of the most meaningful deaths of the show. So, in that regard, he was a pretty big character. So, and the last scene really shows what Jimmy is becoming due to Chuck's death and his guilt, right? And so that's another way to interpret that as well. And that's something that's, again, like I said, going forward, I think, that's going to be a huge thing. And is Chuck's death what pushes him basically to become Saul Goodman, that persona. And I think it ultimately is. I think it's going to be, a process to get there. And I'm not sure even if we'll see that at the end of season 4. But definitely I think that's going to be what kind of sparks it. You know what I mean? Because he's always had this personality, right? But he just hasn't gone full blown, to that side. And that's basically what he is with Saul. So anyways, a lot of stuff in this episode, and a lot of stuff with Nacho too. So a lot of stuff's gonna play out with him now, working for Gus, right? And he knows that they're not playing around anymore, right? Victor and Tyrus, the treatment that they gave him. So I don't know. I mean, Nacho's life is pretty bad right now, And like I said last episode, like the way that all this stuff was worked out, he's almost in a worse position than he was before he basically spiked Hector's pills. Right? Like, he's pretty much in a worse position right now. And so things did not work out for Nacho, sadly. So anyways, and I think this might be his last season, to be honest, just the way that things are kind of going so far, but I could be wrong. I'm not sure. Obviously, we know he's not Breaking Bad, so we know he either has to die or leave or something like that going forward. So anyways, this brings me to my next point here. So my favorite character of this episode is Nacho, played by Michael Mando. Michael Mando is he's really, really good. He's doing a great job as Nacho in the series so far. And he's one of the new characters, right, that was introduced with Better Call Saul. He's pretty much... he's pretty much the only main character in the show that I guess Kim. So Kim and him are pretty much the only main characters in Better Call Saul that weren't from Breaking Bad, right? Or at least like in Breaking Bad at some point. So, so he's doing a really great job as kind of a new character here for the Better Call Saul. Again, like I said, Nacho going forward, I don't know what's going to happen with him. Things are not going well for him. But anyways, he's stuck in between the Salamancas and Gus, right? And he's, kind of over on Gus's side now because, and again, like if he messes up, like pretty much, Salamancas are going to kill him if they find out, and Gus is probably going to kill him if he doesn't do what Gus wants, right? So, like, he's really in a tough spot right now. So, anyways, we'll have to see what happens with him going forward. But Michael Mando, great job. And, he is a great character. I've really grown to like Nacho, right? And you kind of feel for him, even though he's done some pretty bad things so far in the show. But, anyways, so, thank you so much for watching this review. As always, guys, thank you so much for the support on the channel recently. Really been awesome. Views, likes, comments, please keep them coming. The subscribers too, been really great. So anyways, thank you so much for that. Thanks so much for the support. And Better Call Saul, I'm really liking this, I'm really loving this season so far. Really, really awesome. Really bringing back those Breaking Bad feelings, in these last 2 episodes. Really looking forward to the rest of the season. Really am. So anyways, hopefully I get these reviews keep going on Tuesday, Wednesday. That's the goal from now on. So hopefully I'll stick to that. And, please keep coming back each week. Tune in to the reviews. But anyways, guys, again, thanks so much for watching this one. And I'll see you next week for Better Call Saul Season 4, Episode 4.
To shut out feeling lonely.